I'm broke right now. Now, when I use my very last cash that I had, I've been saving this piggy bank for quite a while now. It's like a tin. Now I'm trying to open it up, as you can see right now. Trying to get some cash, man. Wanna eat, wanna go to the shop and get some food. Totally broke. But you know what? I'm gonna survive. I'll be fine. I've been keeping this guy for nearly 8 months, so there should be some good stuff in here. Let's have a look. How did I go from being so poor in one of the most poorest countries on the planet to becoming a millionaire in such a small period of time?
You know, there's a difference between having money or pretending to have it.
A lot of people wonder how I did this without any college degree, without any special skills or anything like that. And today I have decided to tell this story in a much more detailed manner. Also with some pictures. I'll show you guys some of the odd photos, some of the odd videos, because the majority of my journey has actually been documented. There's video from a long time ago. I'm not really gonna cut anything out. I'll share all the trauma, the best moments, and everything, because I believe that all those little moments, all the tribulations that I faced throughout has made me who I am today. I'm proud of every side of my story. So it's gonna be a very long video. I hope that you guys learned something from it as well. So, where did it all start? I was born in one of the most poorest countries on the planet, a country called Malawi. It's in Central East Africa. My childhood basically was filled with climbing trees, running around without shoes, and playing football. That was the only kind of activities that we had. And every night after the game, we would fight. It was just normal, highly violent from the moment we were kids, because even though I was in one of the most poorest countries, I was also living in one of the most poorest neighborhoods. It's called Area 25. And so our lifestyle was like that. And I went to school with children who would go to school without shoes. I was just lucky enough that my parents could at least afford to dress us properly, put some shoes on our feet, then we could go to school. But it wasn't some fancy kind of stuff. It was poverty. We were poor. No cars, nothing. Growing up around this kind of environment exposed me to a lot of things that I've seen, and I think they still have an effect on me. I saw a lot of violence, which some of it I kind of participated. Like I said, being young, there was not so much civil life in a way that people actually express themselves in much more extreme ways, like either extreme violence or extreme alcoholism. And you would see violence around families, and you would also see violence around friends. So this is something that I grew up just watching when I was young. At least I didn't have that kind of element though. In my family, we never had alcohol or physical violence or anything like that. So as a kid, I was very drawn to technology. I really liked tech. But again, if you're poor, you don't really had that much options. In fact, for about 3 years in my life when I was young, maybe from like 10 to 13 or 14 years old, we lived 3 years in a house that had no electricity, no running water, no glasses in the windows. We literally just put some cardboard around it because my dad had just built his first house and he didn't have enough money to actually build it all at once completely. So what happens in those kind of environments is that people move into these homes when they're still unfinished. So we moved in and would be finishing through the house while we lived there. So, at some point you buy the glasses and you put them together, then you put the floor. We even entered the house without a concrete cement, nothing. It was just like, you enter a house and it's basically just sand inside the house. So we lived like that until it was being built up, and we finally had like the electricity, the water at a later stage. I knew the things that I wanted in my life. I wanted a computer so much. That was the number one thing that I wanted all my life. But again, we couldn't afford it. I also knew about PlayStation and video games and things like that, but we couldn't afford it. And my experience playing a PlayStation actually was through going at friends' house who were well doing, and then would play at their home. Sometimes we have to give them a little bit of money just so that they can allow us to play some video games with them. Obviously, as a young person, I was going to school, but to me, it was more like a chore. I never really enjoyed it or understand why I had to do it. I was just doing it because, well, your parents actually say you have to go there. If you don't, you obviously had some serious punishment at home. So I just pushed myself through it. And just after I started high school, my father went to South Africa. He moved from Malawi to South Africa to look for better job opportunities. And my mother would also go back and forth between Malawi and South Africa later on. And I ended up finishing high school on my own. My parents were in South Africa. Africa. I was still in Malawi. Just pushed myself through it. I just literally went there to write the exams. I had already given up before I even finished the last class. I didn't even do that well to get a bursary. So basically it meant I just had to sit down and figure out something to do in my life. At that moment, I had already started spending most of my time with people who had computers because I was really drawn to computers. I just wanted to learn how they work. I wanted to learn whatever I could. So I used to go at studios where people made music. In the ghetto, you had people who are producers or they're learning to become a producer. They were the only guy in the hood who has the computer. So I used to spend most of my time there. And then I got into music as well. I tried to become a rapper and I shot my own music video.
Sick, great, representing the streets. Let's do this, man. Yeah. This is me, no NSK, no more. Raw niggas fuck with hip hop, don't block rock. Paper on my shoulder, I got it like a joke. We make bloods, come next, that's enough. We all underground, moving to another level. Got that shit off, we end up on the devil. Rub the history, got it live like it's gravel. You hit the underground, bloody fool, that is simple.
And then after a year, my mother did the unimaginable. She sent me a computer from South Africa for the first time, just when I had just finished high school. And to me, that was the most life-changing moment for me because I had already learned how to do the basics and work with computers at my friends at the studios. Then I just locked in the house. I basically disconnected myself from my friends and everyone else. I was spending all my time on my computer, basically teaching myself how to code, how to design, how to edit videos. The only time that I could find myself outside was when the electricity were off because we didn't really have 24-hour electricity. We'd have like 18 hours and then 4 to 6 hours maybe without electricity. So I was sleeping when the electricity is off. Or I would go to the internet cafe. I would spend 1 hour in the internet cafe to download PDF tutorials on how to do things on a computer, coding or Photoshop or whatever. And then I would just go back home, lock myself in. My friends were like, "Oh man, I don't know, you changed. You know, you don't really hang out with anyone anymore." The problem though was that I also didn't like what was going outside. So what happens in the ghetto is that most people go into smoking weed and alcohol abuse, cheap alcohol basically, and then they just get destroyed. And I didn't really want to be part of that. So getting the computer gave me a direction and something to focus on other than all the negativity that was going around me. Eventually, my mother came back from South Africa, and then when she came back, she was getting pissed at me for just being on my computer. I wasn't seeing anyone. I wasn't really social anymore. And she started getting concerned about it and she would tune me for it, but then I wouldn't stop. But then she started seeing something that I started making a little bit of money for myself because I could edit people's videos, design a poster, or do something on my own where I wasn't broke as much, you know, for my age. And then she started giving into it, even though she still wanted me to go to university to apply to some course or whatever, but I just didn't do it. At that point, I was really convinced and confident in my skills that I've learned, and I felt like I was in an environment or in the country that didn't give me a lot of opportunities to express myself with my skill sets. I wanted to get an internship or to work at some company, and with what I was doing in Malawi at the time, there was no industry for that was fully developed to support the level of talent that I had developed. So I convinced my mother to convince my father to allow me to go to South Africa to study animation at any animation schools that were available in South Africa. There were so many of them. So it happened. We sold the computer that I had in Malawi, and then the journey took off. I went to South Africa at the age of 17. We couldn't even afford to actually buy a bus ticket to go to South Africa. I was just lucky that one of our family friends' parent, the father, was a cargo truck driver. So that's how I got to South Africa. I went to South Africa on a cargo truck, not even on a bus. There was no way we could afford flying at the moment. So I traveled with that family friend's dad, a journey that literally takes you 2 hours. To go to South Africa, if you fly, it took us more than a week, almost 2 weeks, because of all the logistics and stuff. I had vivid pictures of what South Africa is like. Definitely it's more developed than where I came from. And then I imagined a beautiful life that I'm going to be living good. It's going to be amazing. You know, I grew up watching South African music and soapies and stuff like that. And then I thought that would be the life that I would be living. And then when I got there, the reality sets in. It turned out that my father was living in one of the roughest neighborhoods in South Africa, in Cape Town. This is a place called Delft. This place, you hear gunshots every night almost. People kill each other. It's one of the most dangerous areas. It's literally next to Kailicha. If you know anything about Cape Town, you know that these areas are like the no-go zones. So I was really shocked because, I lived in a rough neighborhood, but it wasn't really like at a killing level. People weren't killing themselves. But when I moved to South Africa, I realized that I was almost worse off still. It wasn't an upgrade necessarily in terms of where I lived. Still, that did not detract me. I still felt like I still had the drive. I wanted to do well for myself. I came to this country with a mission. I wanted to go to school to study animation, but it didn't really take too long for me to actually face the reality. We went to a few animation schools to get the quotes to understand how much it actually cost to study. And it turned out, I think at the time it was about 25,000 Rand a year, if I'm not mistaken. And that was just like, there was no way my parents could afford that. So it was a no-no. So it was stay at home. So I just started staying at home, and then I decided to actually just teach myself how to do all this stuff to the level that I wanted. I thought I was good, but when I got to South Africa, I realized the level of quality and the competition there was real, that I had to actually improve myself. I didn't have the computer anymore. Obviously, my dad could not afford another computer. So what I did, I entered the labor market to get a job. I was doing any type of job you could find. I worked as a gardener, cutting grass at rich people's homes. I worked at a laundromat. I worked at some mechanical shop. Whatever I could do just to get by and make a little bit of money. To the car wash, we used to pay like 15 grand a day. And then a few months later, the worst actually happened. I remember in the middle of the night, we received a phone call that my mother had passed away. And to me, that wasn't even the worst news. In the morning, when we wake up, I learned that I'm not going to be able to go to her funeral because we didn't have enough money to allow for both myself and my dad to go back home and attend the funeral. I didn't even have $100 to travel on a bus to go and see my mother. My dad on a bus immediately went, and I just couldn't afford it. Nobody could afford it basically within our family to provide that kind of money. $100, imagine. For me, it was at this moment that I made a promise to myself that I would never, ever allow myself to be poor. I would never allow myself to be broke no matter what. I would rather DIE than to be poor, even though I was poor at the moment. But I told myself I'll put me in my position where I never had to feel that kind of pain again, or my siblings to also ever go through something similar to that. It was like a wake-up moment because instead of mourning the death of my mother, I was more angry at myself. At what kind of life is this? Why am I allowing myself at 18 years old to be going through this? As they say, when it rains, it pours. 2 days after, when I went to the place where I was doing my gardening job, I learned that I've been fired because I couldn't show up at work for 2 days. But I explained to them what was going on, that I just lost my mother and I just couldn't work. These guys didn't care. They said, no, go back home. So I lost the job also pretty much the same week. But again, it just became another defining moment where I told myself that, okay, when it comes to money, never rely on someone else, whether it's a boss or whoever. My financial life is supposed to be in my hands, under my control. So at this moment, it was clear I'm not going to university. I just lost my mother. There's no money. We broke. And I just had to do it on my own to study. So looking back, I still don't have the computer. At that point, I had to buy myself a new computer. So I started saving money with all these little jobs that I was doing, the labor jobs, put some money together. I remember I added up 600 Rand and I found a second-hand computer online, went to the people who were selling it and I bought it. It wasn't even perfect. It was overheating after a couple of hours, but I had to work with that. Then I met a friend who introduced me to a church, and at that church they had cameras, and I had bullshit myself into it because I told them, oh, I know how to use cameras. I'm a cinematographer. I knew a little bit about cameras and photography and cinematography. So I started filming there. They had the bigger cameras that allowed me to learn actually how to use professional cameras that I had never used before. That also helped me to get another gig to film at some other place, which started giving me some constant income. Then I also met another friend of mine, Lumanyano, who is still a musician. He was like a prodigy musician in the hood. He actually chose me to be filming and taking his photography when he was touring around. So, he used to do gigs in town or in our next neighborhood, which is Kailicha. So whenever he goes to play his music, I would go there with him and started taking pictures and videos, which kind of gave me an exposure in the township for people to know that this is what I do. And then they would start hiring me for weddings and other little projects that helped me to now start bringing in a little bit of income. So there's something important about this point in my life. I could not open a bank account. And the reason was that I didn't have a proof of income. Like I didn't have any formal job to prove with a pay slip. When I went to the bank, they say, no, where's your proof of income? Do you have a job? No. Okay, so we cannot open a bank account. So I had to get by using other people's bank accounts even. But this is what led me to actually get across Bitcoin. I was pondering on the internet, looking for things, being curious, and I ended up coming across Bitcoin.
Yo, what's up guys? This is Gray from the Bitcoin party tonight. Satoshi Nakamoto is here and is gonna show himself tonight in Cape Town Beer House. So if you're not here with us right now, then what are you doing, man? What are you gonna do? Yeah man, but see you tonight. It's gonna be a fun night celebrating the adoption of crypto in South Africa. Next might be your city, but for now, see you in Cape Town.
At this moment, I started getting a little comfortable. I was getting gigs, some better gigs that would last me for a few weeks to a few months. And then I decided to move out of the hood to now go into the city in Cape Town. The way Cape Town works is that the middle of the city is the most expensive place, but it's where all the commerce happens. Outside of the city, it's cheaper, but most areas are dangerous and there's also no opportunity. So for me, I was like, well, I'm doing all this kind of work here in the township side. If I actually go to the city, I might be able to get better jobs that I will get paid a little bit more, and it's exactly what happened. I remember I was working on a gig at some studio in town. I used to lie to them where I live. I literally told them that I lived like 20 minutes away from town, but that wasn't even the truth. If I had to tell them that I lived in the township that I stayed, they would have probably been scared of me, thinking that I might rob them or something like that. So I spent a good amount of time of my life lying about where I actually lived. Nobody knew. So they didn't care if we finished at 10 p.m. because they're like, oh, you live in that area, it's a safe area. But they didn't know that after work, I would go to the taxi rank to get a public transport at 12 p.m. and then go home, and it was a dangerous, infuriating experience I cannot forget to this day. And there's a lot of people in Cape Town who work in all the fancy places, even in the city, and at night they have to go through a dangerous journey of just getting a public transport to go back home. It's not safe at all. So I went through all that stuff. Like I've been through it all. I was selling all that shit here, then I'll take my minibus over here, go all the way back to town, bro. It was insane. And then I left that gig because I thought that I had found a better opportunity with these other two guys who were starting their own film production company. I decided to join them because I had invested all the money that I had in building a supercomputer at the time. I built it myself. I spent all my savings, which was 15,000 Rand. It was all I had. At that moment, it's funny, the biggest thing that I had in my life was that computer. So I joined this production company as a partner because I brought my own computer. But unfortunately, this guy started treating me as an employee in the business and not a partner at all. This is gonna sound terrible, but my co-founder is probably the worst person in the world to me right now. I hate him so much. And I started this whole thing with a good intention. Now I look like an idiot to people. I've always tried my best to do the best. But what are you gonna do when you have people who are so fucked up and they don't really know what to do? They just fuck up and they just go. Motherfuckers. They weren't living up to their promises or anything like that. They were basically just blatantly racist. And it's South Africa anyway, so, those kind of things happen. I decided to quit on them. In the background, I was running another business online. There's a website called Bid or Buy. So I used to bid or buy stuff from China, get them over to South Africa, and then I would sell them. So it used to be basically female stuff like handbags, earrings, little things like that. Or I would buy secondhand items on Gumtree and resell them, like, cell phones, computers, and stuff like that. So I quit on those guys and stayed home for a little bit. In my apartment, I had set up a little office. I've always wanted to have an office at home. So when I got my first proper apartment, that's what I did. Even though it was a shared apartment I was sharing with another person. Basically, it became my place of work where I had my desk over there, and this is the living room. No real space for a home vibe. It was just like all work related. Yo, I'm very happy tonight for no reason, for no specific reason really. Just feeling good, man. It's like it is 11:46 p.m. Cleaning up my room and preparing for tomorrow. Tomorrow is Monday and getting back to work. I went to work this evening, worked like 4 hours and came back home. Now just arranging shit, working on balancing my accounts and shit, and, you know. And during this period also, that's when I came across cryptocurrency properly now, that I found a gig online that was paying me in Bitcoin. I didn't have a bank account or a PayPal account for them to pay me. So I just used to receive these Bitcoins. I didn't really think much of it. I knew it was valuable, but then I already had other businesses going on, and I also had another gig as a motion graphics designer. And I was like, well, it doesn't matter. I can just accumulate all these Bitcoins and just keep them there. They might be worth something one day. And I started believing more in the Bitcoin stuff, but I kept on working. I didn't really give it too much thought. I didn't really fully understand it.
I'm a little angry at myself right now. Today is Sunday, the 3rd of April 2016. I was supposed to sort out some shit over the weekend on Saturday, which is yesterday. But I didn't manage to do that, so I'm really embarrassed for not doing what I had to do. Spent some money yesterday that I wasn't supposed to, wasted some time. I don't see anything productive. When I spend money, I'm always trying to save as much as possible. So, you know, this is usually a feeling that I get when I do anything that's not related to work. I always feel bad about it. But I'm happy as well because I had no money to pay for the bills for my company. But now I got paid on a few jobs that we did, and now I can see my company surviving in the next 2 months or so, which is great. Peace.
And also, it was during this period where I actually bought my first car. You know, just like everybody does, you buy your first car. Well, the only car that I ever had, because I haven't owned any car since. So my first car was Opel Corsa Lite, and it was secondhand. I think I paid like 25,000 Rand for it. I had money at that time, to be honest. I was able to take 25,000 and buy a secondhand car without going really broke. I still had some money left over. So it wasn't really a big deal for me, and I needed it for my business to work out. So I was still busy working, you know, running around. I had like 3 or 4 jobs at that moment. It looked like I was only doing one thing. I had to show up at my gig in the morning, and then around 3 or 4 I had to now go back on my desk at home to work on my international clients job, and then I had to also manage my import business or my second-hand items business. So I was really busy. This moment my life actually started to change. I think 2015 I had taken my first flight ever. I even had no reason. I literally had never been on the plane before. I never flew before, and I was like, man, I don't know how it feels like to fly. So I flew myself to Johannesburg and back for no reason, just so that I can feel how, you know, it felt great. And I never forget those moments because I bought that ticket with my own money. I felt like I did it. I was like, oh wow, I went on a plane back and forth on my own with my own money. I actually felt successful more then than I feel right now, to be honest. It was an incredible moment for me, big, because in my mind I was thinking that only rich people could fly. You know, we grew up thinking that because we just never done it. 2016, I went for my first ever road trip to Durban, a proper road trip. It was, I think, a year after I bought my car, and I wanted to actually explore a little bit. So my friend and I drove together from Cape Town to Durban. So this is my first day of work. I finished everything that I had to do and now ready for a trip. And I'm gonna go to my friend who I'm traveling with. I'm actually excited. I really don't know where I'm going with this trip. I'm just gonna leave, but the first destination will be Botswana, hopefully. Yeah, finally in Durban. We arrived last night. Going into this Titanic at the back. At a place called Tsitsikamma Bridge. It's really cool here. See the bottom of the bridge here, there's a small river. It's kind of scary. If you're not good with heights, you probably shouldn't try. It was really a thrilling experience. I mean, we didn't have money, or at least we didn't have that kind of money. So we stayed at hostels. We traveled through on the road, slept at hostels, and then got back to Cape Town. I learned about myself that I'm actually very adventurous. I should probably do this a little bit more, but at that time I still could not really afford it like that, right? To do it properly. But I got back home normally and continued life as normal. And a few months after this trip, I decided to actually sell my car to buy Bitcoin. So I sold the car, I actually made profit on it, and then I bought Bitcoin with all the money that I sold the car for, and then I just also kept on holding and kept on working as well. And then 2017 came, which was a big game changer for me. I had quit a lot of all the other gigs except for one that was giving me cash to pay for the bills, rent, and stuff like that. But I also had opened my own office in the middle of Cape Town in the city because I wanted to have an actual workspace. And then I had moved out of my proper apartment, moved into a shared house. I remember it was a family that was staying in that apartment. Then I rented a room in the house. The reason was because I wanted to buy more Bitcoin. So I needed to cut down on my expenses. Then I ended up finding a small little office in town. So I had a room just to sleep in and an office to work from. So I would only go home at like 12 or 1 a.m. just to sleep for a few hours. And in the morning, I'd go to a gig, work there until 4 or 5, and then go to my actual office and serve my clientele. And throughout the day, I was managing trades on Paxful, local Bitcoins, because that started making a lot of money. So, I was making a lot of money on a daily basis now, which I ended up quitting all the other gigs that had nothing to do with crypto and focused purely more on the crypto activities. That is also when I started my main YouTube channel, Crypto Hustle. It used to be called Hardcore Crypto at the time. I had already started making videos. I think I made about 2 or 3 videos in 2015 or 16. I wasn't really that deep into the crypto side. I was more into on the creative side, production, film, animation. So I was making the videos that were working for me was like tutorials on DaVinci Resolve, After Effects. I still have videos with a couple of thousand views on that kind of stuff. The crypto videos, I wasn't paying attention until I got into hardcore trading. Then I started making more videos, and crypto, it had just happened also that in 2017 it started going viral.
There was bad news on the 17th in regards to the BIS saying that cryptos can't scale, and Bitcoin is like turkeys doing an experiment about why Christmas is a bad idea. You can't really take them seriously. I'm still holding my coins, bro. Yeah, man, I'm gonna pump it more.
My channel started growing, everything just kind of changed. Crypto moved from like $800, I think, to $3,000 Bitcoin for the first time. And the same year, towards the end of the year, it hit $20,000 per Bitcoin.
What do you think is gonna be the price of Bitcoin at the end of 2018?
The price of?
Bitcoin.
Oh, here we go.
There you go.
You'll
Check
sit
your
and
block
chat
folio.
You'll sit and chat to you for half an hour.
What do you think the price of Bitcoin is gonna be at the end of this year?
I don't know, isn't it like failing miserably? Isn't it like failing miserably now?
Is that what you think?
Like a lot of money.
So, that actually obviously changed a lot for me, which made me to quit everything else and just focus on crypto because I felt quite confident. I had a lot of crypto at the time, and Bitcoin at $20,000 was like, man, I don't really need to feel insecure about living without any gigs and whatever. I can just be and focus on trading because I was like, I've been trading for over a year at that point, and I was making really constant money. So I was like, if I'm making this money per day, why am I struggling just to quit and just focus on trading purely? But it was because my whole idea of making money was money is hard, you have to work for it. So I didn't really trust the money that was coming from trading, even though it was a lot and it was real. But I felt like you still had to work hard and all that kind of stuff. It took me a while, but I ended up cutting the cord with all the gigs and stuff, focused on crypto, only trading, and it was really doing well. The year after, I started Crypto University, my first proper company that actually was very, very successful on a larger scale. The other, opening my own studio were learning stages for me, but, I was the only employee in those companies, really, except when I partnered with some friends to do things together. But Crypto University was the first company that I built. I was actually hiring people. Also, I was already a millionaire by that time in 2018 when I was starting Crypto University, and I focused on growing the company. I started pushing it. the 2020 came through, the lockdown happened. I was so scared. I remember when it happened, we had a crypto conference, a blockchain conference, and they said on Thursday, the country is going into a lockdown. I was in South Africa on that day. I was so furious that, hey, what am I gonna do? You know, all my business models were around crypto and stuff, trading, we're doing some events. So I thought that this is gonna crash the crypto market, which already started happening on that day. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna go against the storm. It's coming with pressure. Then I started grinding hard. I started creating a lot of content on YouTube more than ever before. To my surprise, it started working. My YouTube channel, the main YouTube channel, grew during those days. It was like, it went from 8,000 subscribers to like 30,000 and then on beyond within like 2 months or something, which was great. And then I realized that, oh, you know, things are actually good. I was still making money, even more because I was spending more time online. Everything that I was doing was already online based. And then I decided later on that, you know what, maybe I should travel.
Life-saving buoy means I can get in here, no dying.
You know, coming from an extremely impoverished background, you're always scared of comfort. So I was like, no, you know, I always have to be on the grind. But I was like, if I want to grow, I need to go out there and see things, right? So I decided to start traveling. I basically sold everything that I had. At that moment, you know, I was living in Sea Point. I was doing well for myself. Wasn't really scared about like being completely broke so much. I had things set in place. I was confident at that moment. But I sold everything that I had, you know, just a couple of furniture, and decided to go on a trip, and I just started traveling then I never stopped. I went to Dubai, I went to London, I went to some other countries as well, but there was something different about Dubai that stuck with me. When I got to Dubai, it made me feel so small and insignificant in a way that like a nobody. I went to Dubai for the first time in 2021. I just went there. I suppose there was no reason for me to go. I just wanted to go to Dubai and check it out. I also went to other countries, but Dubai was different because it made me feel broke, like I'm a nobody. It reminded me when I just go to South Africa for the first time, where like, who am I really? Because in comparison, when I was in South Africa, or every time I go to South Africa, I can feel that I am actually in the 1%. With my current status and net worth, I'm definitely in the 1%. So, you know, I can afford to rent a villa and all that kind of stuff. It's cool. But when I'm in Dubai, the goalposts are just like so high. You know, it doesn't matter. If you're not 100 millionaire here in Dubai, it's basically, you're not really a big deal at all. So it gave me a new challenge to look at life. Even the level of luxury is different here. And I decided that, you know what, maybe I should live here. Even in London, I still feel comfortable in London. Like, you know, I'm good. I can stay in Mayfair, you know, one of the best areas there. But in Dubai, it's so big. And also the people are really nice. It's very open-minded. It also challenged me because growing up in Africa, you're not really so exposed to the Middle Eastern community. It's all black and white. And, you know, I interacted with the Middle Eastern community here for the first time properly. I like the vibe and how things are done. Then I decided to challenge myself again, to get out of my comfort zone and move to Dubai. So here we are now. I just moved here recently. I'm still traveling a lot because now I have no choice really. I have to travel these days to get things done. But I'm looking forward to the new challenge and see how far I can push the limit again. I think it's just the same story repeating itself, but with a new mindset. And also I've learned a lot already, and I'm not currently impoverished anymore. At least I have a level of comfort, which is good and bad. It just depends on how you're going to handle it. And the whole point I'm making this video, guys, is to share my story, but also to remind you that it doesn't matter where or how you start. It's all about how you end up and what you do throughout your life and the type of decisions that you make. I'm not special in any kind of way. A lot of people may think that, but I'm sure after listening to my story now, you can tell that this is just another average guy. And he managed to defeat the odds. I still have to defeat more odds as I go, but at least the step one has been done. I also want to talk about sacrifice. A lot of people think of success in these lenses. When they think of success, maybe they think of fancy car, popping bottles at the club, and traveling with nice pictures by the beach all the time. That's not really the reality, at least not in my journey, or at least people I've been seeing. What I've seen is sacrifice. Just sacrifice something to get something else. So in my case, I've sacrificed things like family. I'm basically never with my family. I'm always on my own, somewhere traveling or fighting wars, basically trying to hustle all the time. I sacrifice things like relationship because the life that I've been living for the last few years, since I was 16 years old, had never really allowed for any type of real relationships to develop because the focus was just different. And it's laser focused that everything else becomes a distraction. It's just one thing that I was focusing on throughout. In that context, I'm talking about all types of relationships, whether it's romantic relationships, friendships, and things like that, but also sleep. I don't really sleep much then or now, and that is kind of a problem. But again, you can never really get without giving something out.
The average nigga is just watching television or, spending the whole day on fucking Twitter or Instagram. The people who don't have money, they just keep spending it on stupid shit. I'm based in Cape Town. This is Long Street right now. If I go downstairs, in all these clubs, you'll see that most motherfuckers out there are like middle class. They don't really have that money that they're spending. They're living on debt or they have credit cards, but they're spending it because that's how the market now is designed. Just keep all motherfuckers in debt, and before they even touch their money, somebody already got them because the government trusts the corporations more than you. So they have access to your money before you even have it. And if you go to the club or whether it's the strip club, always remember, everyone else is losing except for two guys, the DJ and the club owner. The DJ is making his check after that night and the club owner is making sales. You're the only idiot losing money.
I had to sacrifice my young years from my teen years, even now in the 20s. I'm 28 now, and I never really get to do the things that people in my age were doing. I never really been the guy to go at the club and then go smoke some weed or go take a bunch of drugs and stuff like that in the name of being young. I just never had that experience. I don't really regret it. I don't miss it. I never wanted it anyway. I'm just saying this to give you context in terms of the level of focus that you need. You need to remove a lot of distractions. That means removing all that nonsense. But now, if I had to do a comparison between my life back then and my life now, my life is much more complicated today than it was. You have accountants, you have to deal with lawyers, employees, you have to pay people. It's just a different level of stress and problems than I had before. Back in the day, it was easy. I was surviving, just trying to get something to eat. Now, that's not the problem, but no matter what, I would still choose the life that I have today, even though it's very hard. It's very unnatural. It's very challenging. You can't stop. You can't rest. You can't relax. There's nothing really that exciting anymore. For example, I shared a story with you guys of my first flight ever. I haven't had that kind of experience since then. To be honest, that really makes me feel like, oh wow, this was really like an accomplishment. Everything just becomes very normal because it's in the affordable range now. Only a few things that I can't really get that are important. At the end of the day though, this life that I live now, I find it a lot more fulfilling. Even with all the sacrifices that I have to make, it makes me more happier. But also, most importantly, I think a life lived in creating value for yourself to prove something to yourself, or creating value for others and impacting and taking care of other people is much more fulfilling. So definitely someone who has a simpler life is probably on average happier than me or any other person who is trying to push themselves all the time in any endeavor. But my life, I think it's a life that's just more fulfilling. I'm able to take care of my sisters, help them, pay their school fees, take care of my family and all that stuff. Plus, I have employees that look up to me. I'm the boss now. I have to pay everybody, make sure they take care of their family as well. It's a huge responsibility, but I take it with grace. I would rather do this than being stuck in Delft somewhere, being scared to just go outside at 6 p.m. because somebody might just rob me at the grocery store. That was traumatic. I think I still have some of it with me. And lastly, on your past, there are two perspectives that are running around in the world, right? There's one where you can look at your past and look for something to blame it on and blame your life basically based on the past you have had. Like, oh, I didn't have this, I didn't have that, this problem, that problem. Or you can look at your past or your current state and think of it as fuel to actually drive you even forward. But I do think it's much more healthier to look at your past as something something that builds you and it drives you instead of looking at it as a negative. So none of anything that I went through is considered a negative, really. I still have much of it with me, right? And I don't want to lose it. All the fights that I've been through when I was young, you know, like the fist fight after football, the negative stuff that I've seen around me, alcohol destroying people, you know, it's partly why I'm so disciplined with it, because I've seen it. I've seen what it does to people, and I never want to see myself in that space. All the drama that I saw growing up, you know, with a lot of people who had no purpose in life, it helps me to avoid that kind of drama or those kind of people, right? So it's all about perspective. I keep reminding myself every year, it's better to have a much more volatile, adventurous life than to have a normal, average life. And the reason to me is this: if you're living an adventurous life, even at your worst, lowest moment, you can still get Hollywood to turn it into a movie. You can write a story, turn it into a movie, and bounce back. And also, it's a story to remember for previous generations. So it's a story that I keep telling myself that I have to live the wildest life I can live, more adventurous, that the future can be able to learn something from it. Thank you guys for watching this long video. I would appreciate it if you can subscribe to this channel and click the like button and also the bell button for notifications. I will be dropping a lot more content, a little bit more of what I've learned throughout the years, and a little bit more detailed stories one at a time, because I still could not compress everything in one video. So I would appreciate it if you subscribe, and see you on the next one. Peace out.